Hello, everyone. Welcome to Options with Doug, streaming live on Monday and Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. Eastern Time on Bookmap Discord and the Bookmap YouTube channel. Before I get started, I need to go through the disclosures. General disclosure. All Bookmap limited materials, information, and presentations are for educational purposes only and should not be considered specific investment advice nor recommendations. Risk disclosure. Trading futures, equities, and options involves substantial risk of loss and is not suitable for all investors. Past performance is not necessarily indicative of future results. Here's my contact information. The best way to get in touch with me is through Discord. My name on Discord is Doug P. Also in Bookmap Discord, there's an Options-Doug chat channel. That's a great place to post questions, comments, and content related to the topics of my presentation and the topics for the channel that I'll go through in just a moment. I'm also on X. My name there is @DougPless. I have a couple of quick announcements. First of all, Bookmap is requiring everyone in Bookmap Discord to verify their account. It is free. You can scan this QR code or go to this link and then follow the steps. You'll need to enter your email address that you signed up for Bookmap with this email address. And then you'll get a code, verify your code, and then you'll be verified. Also want everyone to know that Bruce has posted a new course, Supply and Demand Setups course. This is available in the bookmap.com Learning Center. It's free and available to everyone. Here's the link. Great stuff, great information. I recommend it to everyone. All right, let's get started. Here are the key tenets to my approach to trading. I believe that options trades and market maker hedging activity are key drivers of price in many stocks and futures. This certainly applies to the large cap tech stocks like the Magnificent Seven stocks, and we'll see many examples of that today, as well as the equity index futures like the S&P 500 and the NASDAQ 100, which were a little bit more difficult read today, I thought. For the S&P 500, SPX is the underlying index, SPY is the ETF version of that index, and the ES futures contract is a derivative of SPX. And when traders buy and sell puts and calls in SPX and SPY, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with ES futures. And for the NASDAQ 100, NDX is the underlying index. QQQ is the much more liquid ETF version of that index. And the NQ futures contract is a derivative of NDX. And just like the S&P 500, when traders buy and sell puts and calls in NDX and QQQ, market makers take the opposite side of those trades and they hedge their delta exposure with NQ futures. The focus of my presentation today and the focus of the Options-Doug chat channel is options order flow, the impact of options markets on stocks and futures, and the influence of market maker hedging flow on price action. I have a two-step process for trading. The first step is planning. I use positional analysis. I look at how traders and market makers are positioned at the options market and how those positions change from day to day to develop a thesis regarding the expected trading range and volatility for the day as well as a directional bias. And the second step in my process is execution. I look at real-time order flow in Bookmap, in real-time market maker hedging flow in Spotgamma Hero to confirm my thesis and for setups. And when I talk about setups today, I will be focusing on an underlying asset. Setups in that asset can be taken with futures contracts, shares of stock, or options, depending on the asset and the way you like to trade. Questions and comments are welcome, and I will be watching both the Options-Doug chat channel as well as the chat and YouTube for your questions and comments. Please feel free to post, and I'll do my best to answer your questions. Here's my agenda for today, Monday, May 5th. First of all, I want to go over news items, economic data, events, and earnings for the week. Then I'll go through my positional analysis from today. Then I'll review some setups from earlier today. Then I'll take a look at the live market. And when I get to the live market, if anyone has any stocks or anything else they want me to take a look at, please let me know and I'll be glad to do that. All right, let's get started. Let's start with news items. All right, today ISM Services PMI came out, And before that, that was at 10 a.m. And before that, at 9:45, the S&P Services PMI came out. I'll talk about that in just a minute. And let's go ahead and take a look at the events calendar for the week. Hello, Stephen. Welcome. Glad you're here. Let's take a look at the events calendar. This is the Spotgamma dashboard home screen. So again, S&P Global Services PMI this morning, and then the ISM PMI at 10 a.m. Also note Palantir reports earnings after the market closes today. Tomorrow, AMD reports earnings after the market closes. And then on Wednesday, the big event for the week, the FOMC meeting concludes at 2 p.m. That's when the announcement comes out. And then the press conference begins at 2:30. So the 2 p.m. announcement will be in the middle of my session on Wednesday. At that point, I will stop whatever I'm doing and we'll focus on the S&P 500 and maybe take a look at the NASDAQ too to see how traders are reacting to the announcement. And then note on Friday, there are a number of Fed speakers. Look like all day long. All right, let's take a look at the data for today. All right, so typically the more important data release is the ISM PMI data that came out at 10 a.m. That was greater than expected, greater than forecast. And before that at 9:45, the S&P Services PMI, that was just the opposite, less than expected, less than previous, but still above 50, indicating expansion. All right, that is the news for the week. All right, let's move on now to positional analysis and much more about the FOMC on Wednesday. So this is the ES futures and Bookmap. I'll talk about levels and the structure in just a moment. Let me just point out a couple of key levels, then we'll take a step back and look at a higher time frame. First of all, key levels for today. This is the SPX 5635 volatility trigger. Key support level today, before the cash open and then after the cash open. That was really the key for the day, watching the S&P 500 reaction at that level. And then later this afternoon, the SPY 566 volatility trigger acted as resistance. So the volatility triggers for SPX and SPY, key levels, support and resistance. All right, before I take a look at this chart anymore, let's take a step back, look at a higher time frame. This is an SPX, 1 day, 1 year chart in Thinkorswim. This is the, step back. This is the April 2nd, so-called Liberation Day. The big drop down all the way to 4,800. And then SPX has now recovered that gap level on Friday. So the close on Friday was higher than the close on April 2nd. So SPX, the S&P 500, has recovered that gap level. And it took exactly a month. All right, let's take a look now at a 30-day 1-hour chart, stepping in to a little bit shorter time frame. Again, there's that April 2nd gap down, gap. And then Friday, SPX traded up to 5,700, found resistance at that level, but that was above the close on April 2nd. All right, let's take a look at the levels on this chart. I'm going to start with the expected moves. This is based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. I'm going to start with the weekly expected moves. Here's the lower and upper weekly expected move. Again, based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from last Friday. Those levels remain in place for the entire week. Then the dashed blue lines are showing the lower and upper daily expected move, also based on the options market, based on the closing price for SPX from, again, last Friday. Those levels change every day during the week, and I do post those levels in Discord every day the evening before. All right, so SPX traded almost down to the lower daily expected move, which was just below the volatility trigger, the VT there. All right, those are the expected moves. Let's take a look at the spot gamma levels on this chart. These are the dark red lines. They're based on gamma-weighted open interest. They're provided to Spotgamma subscribers, available on a variety of trading platforms. Again, this is Thinkorswim, a 30-day, 1-hour chart. Let's take a look at the key daily levels. First of all, the put wall. Actually, we'll start with the put wall. That's at 5,200. That's the strike with the largest net negative gamma that can be expected to act as support. Not in play for today. Next level up is the volatility trigger that I mentioned before, acting as support today, key support at 56.35. That's a strike. That is Spotgamma's proprietary volatility and gamma flip level. Below that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is negative. In a negative gamma environment, market makers have to trade with price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to enhance or increase volatility. Above that level, market makers' position on the gamma curve is positive. In a positive gamma environment, market makers have to trade against price to hedge their delta exposure. That tends to subdue or decrease volatility. And note, this is based on Spotgamma's older model that assumes that traders are either long puts or short calls, and market makers have the opposite side of those trades. And we'll take a look at some more information about gamma based on their newer model. All right, next level up is the call wall at 5,800. That's a strike with large net positive gamma that can be expected to act as resistance. And then finally, the absolute gamma strike is at 6,000. That's a strike with the largest absolute positive negative gamma. That's where most of the gamma-weighted open interest is concentrated. All right, shifts and levels. For SPX, the only level that shifted from Friday was the volatility trigger, which did shift higher. And for SPY, the volatility trigger also shifted higher, put wall shifted lower, and the call wall shifted higher. All right, let's wrap up our view of SPX with a 1-minute chart, so we can get a closer look at the levels in play for today. Somewhat of consolidation day today. Key support again at the volatility trigger. And next target up is the SPX 5,700 level. That's a large gamma 3 level. And that did act as resistance again on Friday when SPX broke above that gap level. Let's take a quick look at SPY chart. Then we'll get back to Bookmap. SPY, nice steady uptrend here today. Looks like that uptrend was broken. Also note resistance at the 566 volatility trigger. And now it looks like SPY so far has found support around the 565.0 gamma level. All right, back to Bookmap. So Bookmap again, I have SPX, SPY, and key ES levels shown on this chart. SPX 5635 volatility trigger, SPY 566 volatility trigger, support and resistance. And then this is the ES, lower daily expected to move, which is a little bit different from the SPX, lower daily expected to move. I do calculate those two expected moves independently. And we'll talk about setups in just a few minutes. Pretty choppy day today. And so far it looks like the structure is kind of a consolidation, impulse move out of that, another consolidation, impulse move out of that, another consolidation, and then maybe another impulse move out of that. And note just recently, ES did break this uptrend line, but found support again at the SPY 565 zero gamma level. All right, note there's a difference in price between ES and SPX, and today it is somewhere between 21 and 22, and I'm using 21 and a half. Right now it may be a little bit closer to 22. I do post the end, no, right now back down to 21 and a half. So that's what I'm using. So I'm showing this 56.35 level at 56 and a half. Yes, 56 and a half. All right, so it looks like the consolidation impulse breakout, consolidation impulse breakout, and consolidation impulse breakout is continuing so far as ES heads back up to that SPY 566 volatility trigger. And again, more about setups in just a few minutes. All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at NASDAQ now. Key support levels. This is before the cash open. The QQQ, lower daily NQ, lower daily expected to move. Also the NDX 890 volatility trigger. Then the 19,000, that is the 484 volatility trigger, and also the NDX 19,900 large gamma 4 level. And then that level also acting as support after the cash open. And overall, it looks like NASDAQ doing a pretty good job of sticking to this upward trend line, upward sloping trend line. All right, let's take a quick look at the underlying index charts. Let's start with NDX. Key support just after the cash open, almost to the tick, to that 19,900 level. And let me check and see what that level is. That was a large gamma 4 level, I believe, yeah. And just below that, the volatility triggered at 890. All right, that's NDX. Let's take a look at QQQ. All right, QQQ also trading above its volatility trigger, which is at 464. Steady uptrend. All right, back to Bookmap. Again, steady uptrend. Let's see what's up above. looks like a combo levels up above the 20,200 level. All right, shifts in levels for NASDAQ. For NDX, the volatility trigger also shifted higher. Call wall shifted higher. And then for QQQ, the volatility trigger also higher and call wall also higher. Absolute gamma strike did shift lower. All right, that's QQQ. Again, we'll take a look at setups in just a couple of minutes. All right, let's wrap up our positional analysis by taking a look at gamma. And we're going to take a look at several different views of gamma. So I'm going to start with the older model here just to give us a reference. This is market maker's position on the gamma curve at the beginning of the day for the S&P 500, and NASDAQ and Russell 2000. These numbers have been moving higher, generally higher as the indexes have moved higher, and now really almost neutral across the board, some positive, some negative gamma, almost neutral according to the older model, again, which assumes that for an index, traders are long puts and or short calls. Market makers have the opposite side of those trades, so they're short puts and long calls. All right, let's take a look now at a newer version of Spotgamma's gamma model. This is SPX. So below this line, negative gamma, above that line, positive gamma. So this is showing peak negative gamma, high volatility, centered right around 5,800. That's right here, this red line. And then positive gamma, kind of peak positive gamma on the downside, right at 5,500. All right, that's SPX. There's that 5,500 strike. We'll see that on the trace heat map in just a minute. All right, let's shift to SPY. Pretty similar picture. Peak negative gamma right around 55, 57. So right now, SPY is trading just below the 566 volatility trigger. So still pretty close to the peak negative gamma. So in negative gamma, we're looking for faster movement, more trending movement, and in positive gamma, more mean reverting price action. So this is the newer model showing, again, peak negative gamma. And this is for QQQ showing peak negative gamma right around 475. And QQQ trading pretty well above that, right about 488. So moving up this curve a little bit. All right, back to SPX. Then let's wrap up our view of gamma. Remember in SPX, that positive gamma was located at 5,500, and that's exactly what's shown here, this 5,500 strike. You can see the blue shading the positive gamma. So if price did move lower, we would look for support around that level. Also, here's a positive gamma node. Right around 5580, and also looks like another positive gamma node starting to develop right around 5640 and also 5690. And you can see that with this large GEX bar here, positive gamma for blue for positive gamma, could act as a magnet for price. And that is right near the Spotgamma implied one-day move high. So looking for 5690 as at this SPX 5690 as a potential target for a move higher if price continues to move higher today. Let's zoom in just a little bit so we can get a more little closer view of that. All right, so the implied one-day move higher is just below that positive gamma node at 5690. And note, gamma is greatest at expiration at the money. So as price continues to move up toward that level, if the open interest remains the same, then that gamma should, that GEX bar should increase. All right, let's go back. Let's take a look at some setups now. So based on this, I was looking for moderate to high volatility based on the new model. Stability index still very low at 2%. In this red shading, negative gamma, definitely looking for trending day rather than mean reverting price action. So we have uptrend potential target at SPX 5690. So let's take a look at some earlier setups, then we'll see how that plays out. All right, so let's move on to the again the SP 500, and I'm going to start by taking a look at what options traders have been doing today. This is the HIRO signal. HIRO, H-I-R-O, Hedging Impact Real-Time Options. This is available to Spotgamma subscribers. And I will be the first to admit this signal has been very confusing today. So this is the index signal showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the S&P 500 index components, SPX, SPY, ES, and XSP. The white line is price for SPX, and the purple line is the HIRO signal. Again, this is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity. The direction of line indicates options delta. So a rising line indicates traders are taking positive delta positions. They're buying calls and or selling puts. In a falling line, the opposite. Traders are buying puts and selling calls. Market makers take the opposite side of those trades. So they have to buy and sell futures as traders take options positions. The other HIRO signal that we can take a look at for the S&P 500 is the S&P 500 equity signal. This is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for all 500 stocks in the S&P 500 index. And again, kind of a confusing signal up until about 10:35, 10:36 today. All right, let's go back to the S&P 500. Let's start with this. Start with the index signal here. Let's go back to ES in Bookmap. Zoom in on this. All right, I'm going to focus on this 10 a.m., what looks like a short setup. This is just after the data release at 10 a.m. Initially, there was a bullish reaction, and then a bearish reaction. You can see aggressive buyers on the way up. Green volume dots. Buyers are exhausted. Sellers come in. Price reverts lower. That doesn't last long. Let's go back to HIRO. Zoom in on this. This is the reaction at 10 a.m. This peak pattern, typically a very reliable short setup. Looked like a slam dunk screaming short here, and that it worked out for a scalp, and that's about it. I'm going to shift to puts and calls. So you can see traders start selling calls and buying puts. Looks like a short setup. Didn't last long. All right, over to the equities now. Orange line showing calls, blue line showing puts. Note traders were selling calls. This is the S&P 500 equities from the open, and just after the 10 a.m. data release, they start selling calls again, buying puts. That looks like bearish momentum, both the blue line and the orange line moving the same direction, and that was good for that little scalp. And then that's about it. So it looked like screaming short to me. And again, that was just good for a scalp. And Wayne asks, welcome Wayne, glad you're here. Do you consider the divergence at 10 on Bookmap? So are you talking about the hero divergence and seeing the result of that in Bookmap? I assume that's your question. So we're looking at the short setup. Again, it was just good for a scalp. It turned out this is one of the more misleading signals that I've ever seen in Hero here. But let's go back to Bookmap. And of course, the true signal was the reversal right around 1036. So back to Bookmap. It did look like a short. Buyers are exhausted. Sellers come in at this SPY 564 round number level. Aggressive sellers. And again, it didn't last long. So move down, more chop. And then here was the best signal for the day. Pull back just below VWAP here, just below the SPY 563 level, and price reverse higher. Let's see what options traders are doing in that time. That's at 10:30, 10:35, 10:36. So for the equity signal, that's when traders stop selling calls and buying puts. Let's go back to the S&P 500 signal. And then traders start buying calls. So today so far in the S&P 500 index components, they are buying calls and buying puts. Calls shown by the orange line, puts shown by the blue line. Full alert comes in just before 1035. Signals a potential shift in the hedging flow from negative delta to positive delta. Let's shift to the total signal. When you combine puts and calls, very choppy signal today. But there's that reversal higher. Also looked like another reversal lower. Not the case. And we'll get to stocks in just a minute. Stocks, I thought, were a much easier read today. All right, so that's the S&P 500. And they, of course, the keys for today, reversal at the 5635. It's shown as hedge wall there, but it's actually the volatility trigger for an index. And then this pullback and reversal higher as the hero signal shifted higher, 1036. All right, back to Bookmap. So that's the S&P 500. And pattern for today, uptrend, big consolidation, impulse move higher, big consolidation. And it looked like a breakdown, then back down to that trend line, then another impulse move higher. And then another consolidation. Now, S&P 500 trying to break above the SPY 566 volatility trigger. All right, let's take a look at NASDAQ. Pretty similar setup. I've pointed out the key support levels. NDX, volatility trigger, QQQ volatility trigger. Then a steady uptrend, deeper pullbacks. Let's see what options traders are doing. Let's go to the NASDAQ signal. Again, very choppy. Shift to puts and calls. Also choppy. Traders are buying calls and selling puts today in NASDAQ. Let's take a look at Mag 7. So this is similar to the index signal for the S&P 500. This is showing options trades and market maker hedging activity for the NDX and QQQ. Let's shift to the Mag 7 signal. Note the S&P 500 equity signal is generally the S&P 500 493, Mag 7 plus 493. So this is breaking out the Mag 7 and signal that we can look at for NASDAQ, also the S&P 500. So when we zoom in just a little bit, we can see now traders are started to buy calls. And that really came in at 1150. All right, so that is the Mag 7 back to NASDAQ. Steady uptrend. Rising cumulative volume delta. And also it looks like key driver price is buy stop orders. That's shown by the rising yellow line there. Note that has flattened out. Let's just take a look at back to ES. So buy stop orders also fueling this move higher. That's shown by the rising yellow line, and also aggressive buyers shown by cumulative volume delta, which has flattened out now. All right, any questions about the indexes? All right, let's move on. Let's take a look at some stocks, which I thought, again, were much easier to read today. Starting with Apple, very bearish opening drive. Let's see what options traders are doing in Apple. Very clear, easy read. This is a bearish opening drive. Traders are selling calls and buying puts. Full alert comes in just after the cash open. Get your attention, signals significant options activity. And Apple does break below the 200 put wall, and now it looks like it has recovered that level, which is this line right here. Bearish opening drive, bearish continuation, and then right around 10:35 when the indexes started to shift higher, that's when the options traders took their foot off the gas in Apple, and Apple started to consolidate. All right, back to Bookmap. We know 200 is the put wall. Heat map and Bookmap is showing limit buy orders. There were limit buy orders in that level. They were consumed. Apple broke lower after a little bit of consolidation in that level. And then around that level, that's when some aggressive buyers started to come in. That's shown by the rising cumulative volume delta. And Apple tries to recover again, now trading back above the 200 level. So there's Apple, very beautiful bearish opening drive down below the 200 put wall, and kept going lower until the options traders took their foot off the gas. All right, that's Apple. Next stock, Google. This case, for Google, there was a bullish opening drive. Let's see what options traders are doing. On to Google. Mainly call buyers driving price higher. That's shown by the rising orange line. When traders buy calls, traders sell the calls. They have to buy stock to hedge their delta exposure. And the call buyers finally took their foot off the gas just after 11. And now Google is consolidating. So really call buyers driving Google higher. And also aggressive buyers, shown by the rising cumulative volume delta, at least for the first half hour. That bullish opening drive, pull back to VWAP, nice entry point for a long, up to the 165 liquidity. All right, that's Google. Next stock, Meta. Another bullish opening drive. Let's zoom in on this. Scooch to the left. Let's take a look at this. So that what this is a big block order, institutional block order. Some large institution selling calls just after the open. Looks like they were wrong. Flow alert comes in maybe just about a minute after the cash open, signals significant options activity, and in this case signals a reversal in hedging flow from negative delta to positive delta. So after that institutional block order goes off, smaller traders come in, start buying calls. So they were institutions selling calls. Small traders come in, taking advantage of that, buying calls, also selling puts. And Meta trades up to the 600 put wall key gamma strike. So overall, bullish opening drive, and then options traders take the foot off the gas just after 10 a.m. Meta consolidates right around the 600 call wall key gamma strike. All right, so Meta continues to consolidate around that level. Let's take a look at Bookmap. Sheena, welcome, glad you're here. Sheena asked, on Apple, the bearish opening call line and put line on Hero seemed to me both going down. How can you determine calls being sold, puts being bought? So again, remember the direction of the lines is in terms of options delta. So these are both lines going down. That indicates negative delta. So for puts, that indicates buying puts. That's negative delta position. And for calls, that indicates selling calls. That's also a negative delta position. So remember, the direction of lines always indicates options delta. So falling lines indicate selling calls and buying puts. Rising lines indicate selling puts and buying calls. All right, so Meta continues to consolidate, trading just above the 600 call wall key gamma strike now. Let's take a look at NVIDIA. And we'll see what options traders are doing. So NVIDIA, there was a bearish setup this morning. Let's zoom in on this event. So generally, there was a little bit of a bullish opening drive. Then the hero signals flattened out. There was a call peak here. And then a little bit of an institutional kickoff. Some large institution selling calls. Trend break here. And then traders selling calls, buying puts. NVIDIA breaks lower. And then there's that 1035, 1036 reversal. Traders stop selling calls and buying puts, start buying calls and selling puts, and NVIDIA moves higher. And that was the move of the day. So let's go back to Bookmap now. And note there have been aggressive buyers in NVIDIA all day. You can see all the green volume dots, very steady rising cumulative volume delta. So there was the first setup, that trend break lower. That was the bearish setup. And then the bullish setup, another trend break. And then a move higher. Up to that liquidity at 114.15, 114.50. Acting as a magnet for price. Nice steady uptrend up to that liquidity. And remember the uptrend in NASDAQ, nice steady uptrend. Look familiar? Yeah, it should. Here's remember, NVIDIA key component. There's that break lower, move down, and then the reversal higher. All right, back to NVIDIA. All right, let's take a look at Tesla. All right, in Tesla, there was another bearish opening drive. Let's take a look at Tesla. Traders selling calls. Overall buying puts. And then they take the foot off the gas at 1035. As the indexes start to reverse higher, or indexes reversed higher as options traders in Tesla and NVIDIA switch, either take the foot off the gas or switch from negative delta to positive delta. All right, back to Tesla. And note Tesla did break down below the 280 hedge wall and is now trading back above that level. That's shown with this line right here. All right, back to Bookmap. And note the aggressive buyers in Tesla that really came in just after the cash open, even though price was dropping, just like NVIDIA, a lot of aggressive buyers in. Steady rise in cumulative volume delta there. All right, one more stock. Let's see. Wayne asked, doesn't NVIDIA pull everything in it? It has a large influence on the indexes. We'll take a look at something in just a minute. AAPS, sorry if I'm mispronouncing. How about Meta? I already talked about Meta. Meta was a bullish opening drive up to the 600 call wall key gamma strike. We can take a quick look again at Meta. Bullish opening drive up to the 600 level. And let me wrap up with Palantir, which Palantir reports earnings after the close today. And let's take a look and see what options traders have been doing in Palantir. Then we'll take a look at the live market. So Palantir, again, reports earnings after the close today. Net for the day, traders have been slight sellers of calls and buyers of puts. And let's go to, I'm going to shift to the totals. Actually, let's take a look at Palantir and Equity Hub here. So what this is showing is peak positive gamma right around 120. Let's go back to Palantir. Hero trading right around 124.60. So right now it looks like path of least resistance is this way. Remember, as gamma becomes more negative, price can move faster through that negative gamma. So right now, Palantir trading above that peak positive gamma. Path of least resistance is to the upside. All right, let's get back now. Let's take a look at one other thing. Let's go to tape here. I'm going to go to tape. So what I'm looking at over here is the top options volume. So you can see in the top, we'll look at the top 6, 7 here. Core, SPY, QQQ, SPX, then stocks, Tesla, NVIDIA, Apple, and Palantir, driving price. So yeah, as far as options are concerned, Tesla, NVIDIA, Apple, in this case, Palantir driving the indexes. All right, so speaking of indexes, let's get back. I'm going to shift to total, see what's going on with the S&P 500. Looks like grinding higher. S&P equities also grinding higher. Let's go back to Bookmap. All right, so ES is broken above the SPY 566 volatility trigger. Consolidation, and looks like a little bit of a pullback after that consolidation. Then more of an impulse move higher. Continuing to grind higher. And remember, let's go back, let's take a look at Trace. We'll check on gamma positioning. We're heading up toward, now there's another pocket of, that's back at the 5690, which would be right around 5712, something like that, for ES. All right, so back to Hero. Let's zoom out just a little bit. So potential target at, it would be around SPY or just above SPY 567. Darken up the heat map a little bit. Steady uptrend continues. Buy stop orders fueling that move higher, shown by the rising yellow line there. Take a look at NASDAQ. Also continuing to grind higher. So the implied one-day move high for SPX, right around 56.85, and that is equivalent to about ES 5706.5 or 5607. So two potential targets up above if price keeps going higher. So the implied one-day move high would be just below the SPY 567 level, which is at 9.25, 5709.25. Zoom in on this just a little bit. Let's check Hero again. And now the index signal, which has been very choppy today, does look like it's moving a little bit higher. Let's check the equity signal. Zoom in on this, providing a little bit more clarity, I think, today. Steadily rising. Looks like maybe making equal highs here. Back to trace. Looks like there's still gamma concentrated at 56.90. And then the 56.85 just below that. All right, last call for questions, comments. Does anyone have any stocks they want me to take a look at? Oh, one thing I wanted to take a look at. Let's take a look at Netflix. And anyone watching the news is probably aware that Trump announced over the weekend 100%. He wants to put a 100% tariff on foreign movies, and it looks like there was a quick knee-jerk reaction in Netflix right after the open. Traders taking negative delta positions, and that quickly shifted to positive delta. Let's see what they were doing. So right at the open, there were some call sellers and put buyers. That didn't last long. So maybe about a minute after the open, traders started selling those puts and buying calls, and Netflix reversed higher. And now it's really consolidating as the call buyers and put sellers took the foot off the gas right around 10. All right, back to SB equities. Abu, let's see. Tom, sorry, I don't speak That looks like maybe German. Abu wants to see NQ. Sure, we can go to NQ. Let me shift back to puts and calls. We'll shift to the Mag 7 and go to NASDAQ. And Wayne asked, any chance of you doing this earlier in the day? Right now, Bookmap has pretty much a full schedule in the morning. Bruce at 10, and then Tom B at 11:30, and then I come after Tom B. So this is the and this is the time of the day that works best for me. So, if you have more interest in seeing more of me, let me know. Send me a direct message in Discord, and I'll take a look at it. All right, here's Abu. Here's NQ, also steadily moving higher. Looks like next target above is the NQ 16,000. Oh, I've got the wrong labels. That would be 20,200. I've got to update my spreadsheet. Got the wrong labels. So 20,200 up above. Back to ES. And we'll do one last check of trace. All right, so target remains at 5690. That's SPX 5690, which would be around 5712 for ES. All right, everyone, I want to thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments. Remember, big day on Wednesday, FOMC, 2 p.m. And we will, on Wednesday, I'll go through a setup for this. So we'll take a look at how traders and market makers are positioned in the S&P 500 before the FOMC, what traders expect from the FOMC announcement, and then we'll do a live coverage of FOMC on Wednesday. So an FOMC focus on Wednesday. Hope to see everyone there. Thank you very much for watching. Thanks for your questions and comments. Back to Bookmap, and I'm going to wrap it up. Again, thanks for watching. Hope to see you on Wednesday, and have a great afternoon. Bye.